A really good question that comes up a lot of the times is, what did Yeshua mean when he said all food was made clean? What did that mean? And it's a very good question, and there's a very good answer, a very easy answer to this. And you cannot always take things at face value as it is told in the Bible. You always have to look a little deeper, because it says, those with ears to hear and eyes to see, let them hear. And that does not always mean just listen to what I'm saying. It means understand what I'm trying to get across here. Yeshua always spoke in parables and always told people, blessed are those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. So starting in verse 1, it goes, the Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law who had come from Jerusalem gathering around Jesus, and some of his disciples were eating food with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. The Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they give their hands a ceremonial washing, holding to the tradition of the elders. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash, and they observe many other traditions, such as washing of cups, pitchers, and kettles. So the Pharisees and teachers of the law asked Jesus, why don't your disciples live according to the tradition of the elders instead of eating their food with defiled hands? He replied, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites. As it is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. You have let go of the commands of God and are holding on to the human traditions. And he continued, you have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions. For Moses said, honor your father and mother, and anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. But you say that if anyone declares that what might have been used to help their father or mother is korban, that is, devoted to God. See, and here you see these parentheses that are translators' texts. These are what the translators, they're the footnotes they added, and sometimes it always doesn't come around as correct, and you'll see what I'm saying in a couple minutes. He says, then you no longer let them do anything for their father or mother. Thus you nullify the words of God by your tradition that you have handed down, and you do many things like that. So these people came up to Jesus, these Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, all these people that were against him, all people that had their own. They were like the rabbinical Jewish people at the time, and they were all in the Talmud and all in their wicked witchcraft, and they did all their stuff. And he's like, why don't you do our traditions? And he's like, you guys add and take away. You don't even do God's commands. You're adding and taking away. You do your own traditions, what you feel is right. You guys are just as Moses said. And he starts going off on he starts going for the command. He starts explaining to them what they're doing wrong and what it means, what the commands really meant. And again, Jesus called the crowd and said to him, listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. So, it says see footnotes below because there's no verse here. It says some Greek manuscripts exclude this verse, which I don't know why because it's very important. But it actually states that in other translations it says that he with ears to hear let him hear, and with eyes to see let him see. And that meant understand what I'm saying. Do not take everything at face value. It's like when you were in school, or when you're in school, if you are in school now watching this, and your teacher says, listen closely to what I'm saying, because sometimes they're trick questions, sometimes they're trick answers, and there's always not taken at face value. You can't always take that. And in verse 17, after he had left the crowd and entered the house, his disciples asked him about this parable. Are you so dull? He asked. Don't you see that nothing that enters a person from the outside can defile them? For it does not go into their heart, but into their stomach, then out of the body. And right here is the translator's text, which is added. And if you go back to Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic, there is no signs of this. It only comes in the English text. And it says, in declaring this, Jesus declared all foods clean. And that was not correct. That was nowhere found in any of the Bible. That was actually translators saying, he put that in there in his own understanding, not understanding what actually was meant. He went on, what comes out of a person is what defiles them, for it is from within, out of a person's heart, the evil thoughts come: sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and defile a person. So his disciples asked him, what did that mean? I don't understand. They were fishermen. They did not understand these things. They were not as the Pharisees that were learned. They grew up in the Torah. They grew up reading. The disciples grew up as fishermen, working men. They probably didn't go to school. A lot of people didn't go to school back in the days. They didn't learn all these things. A lot of people didn't know how to read. So they're like, what does this mean? We don't understand what it means. And he says, whatever comes out of a man is what defiles him. What the evil he speaks, they speak evil towards everything. They speak evil towards God. They speak evil in the ways they work, in the ways the stuff they have. He goes, them changing the commands is them defiling themselves. When you guys eat with your unwashed hands, that is not defiling yourselves. Nowhere was it written that you must wash your hands before you eat. And it's probably a good thing to wash your hands before you eat. But nowhere is it stated you must eat or you are sinning. You must wash your hands before you eat. You must wash your dishes. Nowhere is it ever stated that you must do that. And even if it was here, even if it did show up, pork, shrimp, all the unclean foods, those weren't considered food back in the day. The food that could have been there was, back in the day, there was marketplace. In the Rome day, there were a lot of pagans, there were a lot of witchcraft people there, and they would sell meat, which is like cow, sheep, chicken, that you would sacrifice to idols, and that could also be considered unclean foods to those people because you don't buy that. He's saying that meat you buy, the meat you eat, if as long as it's like cow and not undefiled food, that is food. Nothing else was described as food back in the day. You shall not eat pork, you shall not eat shrimp, you shall not eat clamfish, you shall not eat any of that. And so I hope you guys read your Bibles. Have a good day.